inside our minds is beautiful and vibrant. We're not the problem. No! Society is, so throw our own party. You're only invited if brain diversity is something you find exciting. 3 cheers to neurodivergency. Raise your cups. Hey! Positivity is non-toxic, so drink up. Here at the Rainbow Connection. Rainbow Connection.
Hello, you beautiful people, you. I am Andrea, and this is the Rainbow Connection, your source of non-toxic positivity for neurodivergent brains and those who love them. Today, we've got my first podcast interview, and I am so excited to introduce you to a friend of mine named Jaesic. I'm going to let them tell you all about themselves in the episode proper, but we dive into a lot of fun stuff. It is a long episode, so grab yourself a bevy, grab a blankie, maybe open a window and get comfy. And we are going to talk about gender. We're going to talk about neurodiversity. We're going to talk about how to love yourself and how to find joy, and also how to be an ally. So I hope you love this episode, and I will see you on the other side. Tell us, Jaesic, who are you? What do you do? How do you identify in this weird world?
Oh, God. Such a loaded question, Andrea.
I know, right?
I don't like being perceived. No, I mean, that is true a lot of the time, but
I understand that struggle very well.
speaking of the neurodivergent experience. No, okay, so hi, my name is Jaesic. I am a life coach and peer support specialist. I do diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice training, facilitation, coaching, education, that kind of stuff. You can call me a practitioner if you like. All of that is under my company called Queer Culture Coaching, something that I started within the last 2 years now. I think I've been at it. So it's been quite the adventure, and we can talk more about that later probably, but I'm a non-binary. Non-binary, autistic, ADHD. So that's autism and ADHD, as we like to refer. Yeah, non-binary, ADHD. I have hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, and I consider that to be a large factor of who I am because it affects how I am. I am an avid dancer. I do social dancing. I produce events for social dancing. I do a lot of internal work for safety and access, as well as like teaching and DJing. I'm a musician. I love singing. I play instruments. I love collaborating with fellow musicians. Everyday things like reading and writing and like all that stuff too. But yeah, thank you for having me. I'm super excited to dive in to this topic. I could talk. This morning I got to talk about gender in one interview, and now I get to talk about neurodivergence and maybe gender. And this, like, I'm just so excited. This is my jam, y'all. Like, let's go.
Oh, awesome.
It's a good day.
Yes.
Exactly.
Well, you're like, when I thought of like the ideal first guest for this podcast, you were the first person that came to mind. And I just, because like, I feel like you in part, so many people too, but you in part like epitomize what this podcast is about. And it's that everybody is so many different things. And that creates this beautiful, unique experience that every person is having. You know, not one person is, you know, non-binary the same way, not one person is neurodivergent the same way. And then you combine those two things plus everything else that makes you you. And you're just this, you know, this cocktail of, you know, exactly who you are, but it makes your experience of the world unique to you, which comes with it, I think, benefits and sometimes hurdles to jump over. So can you talk about how your experience and your, you know, just at being all the things that make you you has been kind of beneficial and helped you kind of, you know, it probably has impacted your business negatively and positively, you know, made some stuff harder, but made some stuff just, you know, it couldn't be any other way. So can you talk a little bit about that, the kind of the two sides of the coin, as it were?
Oh gosh, I don't even know where to start. So I'll start kind of at the beginning of all of this anyway. I didn't know I was non-binary truly until I was 25 years old. And I'm 30 now. So it's been 5 years, which I realized this morning. I'm like, holy crap, that's ridiculous. So yeah, I didn't understand I was non-binary until about 5 years ago. And since realizing my gender and, you know, realigning, I like to think of it, to my true self. Not only did that open doors to getting the proper diagnoses for my other disabilities, like for my connective tissue disorder, and accepting that I actually am disabled and not just like trying to live up to able-bodied standards and failing all the time and feeling like shit because of it. Oh, I forgot to ask, is swearing okay?
Oh yeah, swearing is welcome.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Fan-fucking-tastic. But yeah, I not only did the door that like opening the door of gender opened up so many other doors. I discovered my autism. I accepted my ADHD. I accepted my disability, my physical like connective tissue disability. And it really let me embrace all that I am and understand that that's allowed to change also as I evolve, because humans are evolving creatures. We're meant to be. We contain multitudes. You know, we're supposed to grow and change. So coming to that understanding and, you know, letting that deepen my non-binariness and deepen my acceptance of myself has really allowed me to see the world for more of what it is. And part of that was accepting that I'm just not going to fit the mold for, you know, the able-bodied and neurotypical world that we have. Like, I never was going to be truly successful in ways that honor my needs and my boundaries in healthy ways. So I had to become my own boss. And that's why I became a coach. That's why I became more of my own practitioner. Like, I've done DEI work in the past, but it's like I needed to do it on my own to really benefit myself and thrive, not just survive. And I will say, like, the majority of my experience so far has been pretty positive because people are looking for that. They understand that the world is diverse. It's meant to be diverse. It's meant to be honored as a spectrum of existence because that's what humanity is. We exist on a spectrum. You know, it's funny, like, if we didn't have diversity in all the ways that we do, humans would cease to exist. Like, we literally wouldn't have evolution. We would die out. Like, we need neurodiversity. We need gender diversity. We need all the diversity that we have to you know, continue on as a freaking species. Like, I will say maybe the negative side of that coin then would be like the internal, where it is as good as it is to be my own boss, it is also a great struggle because I am neurodivergent. I am disabled. Like it's better to be at the mercy of my own hand than it is to be at someone else's, but it's still a struggle because I still have to set a schedule. I still have to maintain that schedule. I need flexibility, but I can't be too flexible or nothing will get done. I can't just always rely on motivation. I have to inspire my own action when that motivation isn't there. You know, I've had to develop tricks, basically, like mind hacks and body hacks to really continue on and build this business as best I can over the last 2 years. So yeah, I would say that's been the real struggle. And honestly, as much as people, like, I do say people are looking for what I do, it is still slow. It is still a very slow grow, slow burn kind of thing, where it's really word of mouth and like a few Google searches. You know, that's how I'm getting noticed right now so far. So I'm very grateful for that. Don't think that I'm not, but it's still, you know, it's pretty slow, figuring it out one day at a time kind of thing. But yeah, I'm grateful at least that I can be my own boss and I can draw from my experience in training, but also in my lived experience as all the identities that I have to, you know, inspire compassion in others and foster learning.
So you mentioned two things that I want to dive into, and I want to dive deeper into your story. But before we do that, you mentioned brain and body hacks. Can you share like your favorite hack you've like figured out? And you know, it might be hyper specific to you, so it may not work, but you never know.
Yeah, I was gonna say. You never know. Yeah, like so it's funny, you know, the whole like there's two wolves or two clowns trope that people joke about.
Oh, no.
So mine are autism and ADHD, where like they're constantly at odds with each other and in like an internal conflict. And autism for me and for most autistic people, I will say, not to generalize, but like we have our things. autism really thrives on structure and predictability, reliability, needs, parameters to feel successful. And then the ADHD is the novelty impulse. Both are kind of motivated by intrinsic things like interest, like you need interest and emotional engagement, but especially with ADHD. And then you have like the novelty, the need for novelty, the need for spontaneity and impulsivity. And they are constantly just battling it out. So for me, I've found that structuring my days in time block that have flexible internal content, like not scheduling specific tasks all the time. I have like a running to-do list in a journal that just like literally is just run. I write the day at the top. I brain dump all the crap that I know I need to get done eventually. I carry over the things that I haven't completed yet into those lists, and then I separate them out. And then I structure my day based on, okay, this time to this time on Mondays, I want to be writing for my blog. And this time to this time on Wednesdays, I want to be doing work for my nonprofit development. And, I'm scheduling out, and I don't always stick to it, but at least it's there to rely on. So when I do have problems prioritizing, I can look at that and be like, okay, what fits this time block if there's no like really urgent pressing deadlines right now? Like what can I do to keep me structured? There also like body hack. I try my best to have at least 1 or 2 movement breaks during a day. I know for both autism and ADHD, we can hyper focus like a fucking bitch. Like we can just do that. And so it's really important to like break that up to keep our body's stamina healthy, to keep us balanced. So I have an alarm on my phone at 2:00, and it's self-care time. So if I haven't taken a break by 2:00, I go get lunch, or try to. Like sometimes I still forget to eat, but whatever. I'll grab a cheese stick and go for a walk, or I'll play with the dog, or just drinking water, or I'll put on a dance song. Like I'll literally put on a song and wiggle my body for 3 minutes just to get my blood flowing and like rejuvenate a bit. And then there are days where I literally won't leave my bed, and I allow that, and I refuse to feel guilt over it. I coach my clients from my bed. Every client I sign, I'm like, listen, I want to afford you the same amount of care and kind of care that I want to afford myself. So that means in this relationship, we decolonize how we treat time and how we treat professionalism. And you will see me from my bed coaching you. And we might have to cancel close to last minute, and that's okay. Like as long as we have a transparent consensual agreement at the very beginning that this is how we're going to do this, then I have been able to let go of some shame and guilt that comes along with needing to stay in my bed if my body's having a bad day, or needing to cancel even if my brain or body or both are having a bad day. Like I think we deserve to say no. We deserve to say no and have our boundaries and take care of ourselves. So those are just like a few of the key ones that I rely on day to day for sure.
Oh, yes. Those are awesome. And that it resonated with me, so I can imagine it will resonate with other people too. Because a couple of you can see me like reacting. I'm like, yes, oh my God. Yes. I'm like, this is me. And I feel you on the kind of, so this 2 clown, 2 wolves thing I had never heard of before, but I've got ADHD and I've also got obsessive compulsive disorder. And so as you can imagine, structure things in a certain specific way. I like having my routines, but my ADHD brain is like, let's do something new every single 5 minutes. Like let's just,
yeah.
And it's a lot sometimes. It's a lot. Yes. But so I want to hear so much more. And you used a phrase that's just like, attacked my brain in like the best way possible. I was like, oh my gosh, ask about that. You just used the phrase decolonizing time and professionalism. That like sounds just like a beautiful path that I want to go down. Like, can you tell me more? Like, can you say more?
Yeah. So there's so many things that are a product or a symptom or however you want to, talk about it. But I'll call it symptoms because white supremacy and colonialism is a disease, in my opinion. And the ways that we live day to day, we can decolonize our interactions, our day to day, like literally by consciously choosing to say, actually, I am not valued by what I produce, how I spend my time, how I wear the right clothes and have the right hair and, show up on time even. Like that is such bullshit. try to stay close to the time you agreed on to meet with people, but like also shit happens. Like we don't have to judge people for having time blindness or getting caught in traffic or having a small emergency that they had to deal with or whatever the fuck it may be. Like I think really the judgment part and the shame part, like choosing to withhold that and kind of put it in the trash basically, and just like, oh, radically accepting that we're human. That to me is decolonizing. So like when I use decolonizing as a verb, I mean that we are taking the structures that uphold white supremacy and the symptoms of it and dismantling them. We are saying no thank you, because capitalism has done a really good job of drilling into our heads that we are valued by what we produce every moment, and we are worthy of judgment if we don't show up in a very specific white centric, honestly male centric, upper class centric, like all of those things. If we don't show up a certain way, then we are not worthy, we are not valuable. If we don't treat time a certain way, which is wrapped up in professionalism, if we're not fucking perfect, perfectionism is a symptom of white supremacy and colonialism. So if we choose to believe in our inherent value as human beings just for fucking existing, that pushes colonization away a bit. That kind of dismantles those structures a bit. And for my clients specifically and for myself, like I want to make sure that at least in our time together, we can step outside of those structures and just be human, because I know the world demands so much of us. But if we can step outside of that and really see what's true for us outside of those systems, outside of those structures, then maybe we have a better chance at pushing back, when we're back in that default world, so to speak.
Yay. Oh gosh. I feel like when I talk to you, sometimes I'm more optimistic than other times, but I really it makes me I'm like, I know I know the direction the world needs to go in. And I so greatly hope that I get to see it. I'm so scared that I might not get to see it, but I'm like that direction over there, just this way. I can see it in my mind, and I know, I mean, I don't have the solution to every problem, but I know a couple things that we could fix that would really make a big difference. And what types of what do you what is standing between us and that ideal world where people get to just be people? How do we get there? Do you have I figure if I have some ideas and you have some ideas and another person has some ideas and we put all the ideas together, maybe we'll get there.
Put them together. Put them together. Honestly, okay, I have so many things to say. Oh gosh. Okay. First of all, look to indigenous culture. Look to the Black trans women that are kicking ass out in the world. Like the people who frequently are most marginalized, right, are already doing so much work and have already been carrying humanity forward without getting their due credit and being penalized for it and discriminated against and murdered and all these awful things. So starting there, I think, is really important. But also understand that there's in that vein, there is already so much work being done in grassroots community building and activism, building sustainable systems outside of colonialist, capitalist, white supremacist, all that gunk, outside of those things. And it's funny that you're asking this, because in my interview this morning, the last question that the interviewer asked me was, how hopeful are you for a world free of transphobia? And I was like she was basically asking me, do you think we'll see it in your lifetime, in our lifetime? And I kind of answered it with a non-answer, because as great as it would be to see a world free of hate, free of crime against identities, crime against people for their identities, rather, as wonderful and beautiful that could be, I feel like directing our attention there to this fantasy world essentially is actually robbing us of the very hope that is alive right now in the action that's already being done. And it can get us stuck in this cycle of despair almost if we're constantly holding out for a world free of these things, where we might not ever see it, especially if global warming is going to continue on its path the way it is. Quite literally, we might be fried by the sun before we see a world free of these oppressive things. So I think that the more important focus should be really okay, what's happening on the ground now? Where are these pockets in our worlds being formed? Where are these communities being built? What can you do to add to it and be a part of it? Who are your leaders that you're looking to? Who are your ancestors that you're calling on? You know, including all the cultures, being very intentionally intersectional in your approach to life. There's so much that we can focus on now. That, not to say that, you know, hope of a better future can't be motivating, and for some it is, and that's beautiful, and I want anybody who has that to hold on to it dearly, but don't let it distract you either from what you can do now, what can be loved on now, what can be worked on now, especially if you're an ally of, you know, any oppressed identity, any marginalized identity. You know, how are you leveraging your privilege really to benefit what's already in the works? There is something to be said about thinking about the future, this idealistic future, but don't let it distract you. You know, have your attention here, have your attention now. And I really wish, because this thought that I'm expressing is from something I read, and I can't for the life of me remember what it was. I'm going to say it might have come from an essay in the book Holding Change, I think it's called, by Andrea Marie Brown, who, by the way, y'all, if you want to up your game in activism and in understanding the world and how it works and your role in it, read her work. Like, she's amazing.
We will include that name in the show notes as well.
Yeah, awesome. Yes, it is called Holding Change, The Way of Emergent Strategy, Facilitation, and Mediation by Adrienne Marie Brown. I think it's in that book, but I could be wrong. It might be in something else. Either way, her work's incredible. The people that she works with are incredible. We have a lot to learn from these individuals, and I'm just like expounding my own interpretation, I guess, of like how, yes, hope is important, but hope now. Put hope into now, into like the present tense.
Yes. Oh, I love that. So that has got me thinking, how does one, in your opinion, balance being an ally while also being a member of a marginalized community?
Not only are us marginalized folk oppressed, obviously, we're marginalized for a reason. We are significantly harmed by the systems that affect us. Like, I literally just went to a vigil for Next Benedict last night, which was very difficult. A 16-year-old child beaten in their bathroom at school died the next day just for being who they are. Like, clearly, we are harmed, okay? But what I think a lot of us fail to recognize, or willfully refuse to recognize, is that every single person under the sun suffers in some way because of the systems that we refuse to dismantle together. Every single person. This morning, you know, I was talking, I mentioned I've talked a lot about gender because I'm doing an allyship workshop for Trans Day of Visibility, which is coming up. I'm super excited. So, quick pitch: Rochester Rainbow Union is throwing a mutual fund campaign, and it's like for Trans Day of Visibility, but also they're calling it based on Tuck Woodstock's, who's a fellow podcaster. He has this concept of Trans Day of staying in and having a nice snack. Because it's important to recognize that not only is visibility important, yes, but a lot of us, especially right now, don't have access to safe visibility. And it's important to do self-care and let allies show up and do the work. Just pitching that. But talking about gender this morning for that purpose. Oh shit, brain, don't do this. Hang on. Oh shit. Damn it. No, I was on a roll. Oh my God. It had something to do with that. Hang on. Oh, well, if this wasn't the point, this can be the point. That's fine. Like talking about gender, just as an example, you know, if we are all agreeing and buying in to this mentality or notion or whatever, that men equal this and women equal this and non-binary people and intersex people and, you know, anyone that's outside of those boxes, they don't actually exist. They're liars, they're fakes, they're creeps, they're whatever. Not only does that harm, obviously, the people that are left out of those boxes, but the people inside the boxes are in boxes. That's harmful too. Do you know how many men feel inadequate because they don't measure up to the ideal, quote unquote, toxic, really, you know, ideal of masculinity, or vice versa for women? Like, even cis people struggle to have secure identity.
Because there's no one normal way to be cis either. And they are under this assumption that there is. And if they're not that, then, but this ideal does not exist because there's no one paragon of personhood.
Right. Like that's the lie. It's not that we are all liars. It's that's the lie. That there is one way to be human. Like newsflash, everybody. But one of my favorite things to say about gender, and I think I started saying this maybe a year ago. I don't know. There are as at least as many genders as there are people on the earth because there is only one Jaesic. There is only one Andrea. There's only one. Whoever you are you. No one is like you. No one can understand your inherent sense of identity except for how you express it. And it might look similar to other people's, but that's still like they're not equal. They're not the same. They're not. So like, and that comes down to neurodivergence as well. That comes down to any identity. We can share culture, we can share tradition, we can share ideals and values, but that doesn't mean each person is literally the same as the next person who shares those values. So not one cis person is like another cis person, technically. Not one trans person is another exactly like another trans person. Not one autistic person is like another autistic person. Like one of my favorite things that cracks me up, and favorite not in like a I actually love it, but just in like a like, wow, that's funny life. That's a silly little life thing. When I tell people I'm autistic and they're like, oh, I never would have known.
Because it means this one very specific image, it brings this image into their mind that they saw on TV of this one autistic person's experience, and they're like, "Oh, that's what it means. Okay."
Right. Like, sorry everybody, but if you've met one autistic person, congratulations. You've met one autistic person. That's it. Like, so that was a long spiel, but we got there.
We did. I love it. And so I there's now my brain's doing the thing. So you were talking about how everything is a spectrum, like human life is a spectrum. And I love that there's this ability to find connection and community and all of these things within other people, and it's nice to be part of a community, but you're never going to be identical to every person in that community. You might change communities, you might discover new things about yourself, leave old things behind. How I feel like that can probably be like a real mind fuck for someone who hasn't like fully embraced that. Like that's a big idea, like who we are is constantly changing. I feel like it's the opposite of what kind of society tells us. You get to 23 and you're fully baked, and it's like, there you are, congratulations, you have to pick out your life's career at like 18 and like done and dusted, right? It's like, and you're done, ding. But so that I feel like the idea that we're constantly changing, and because change is scary. So how can people kind of come to terms with this and embrace this fact that we're always changing, and it's not always going to be the same day to day, year to year, person to person.
Yeah. Honestly, working toward deepening your emotional intelligence and working towards building a growth mindset, it all comes down to willingness and radical acceptance, which is hard. It's a struggle for a lot of folk. I struggled certainly at a certain point in my life with doing that, and here I am. Like it really just comes down to the willingness of an individual to be presented with new information and choose to adapt, to readjust, to reinterpret, to develop new understanding, and not just willingness to do that as it comes along, but like to seek it out also, to get curious. Okay, here goes my other spiel that I do. I am a firm believer in the 3 C's, which are curiosity, courage, and compassion. And I think the greatest of these is curiosity, because if you have a foundation of curiosity, you're never assuming concrete fact. You're never assuming the stories in your head about why someone is the way they are fact or truth. You're asking questions, you're seeking knowledge that way. You're like, curiosity allows that growth mindset to take hold pretty naturally, pretty organically. And it might not feel organic at first because maybe you're not used to having a curious mind. Maybe that was just conditioned out of you because of how we raise children in this country.
Don't ask questions, be quiet, stop asking why.
Exactly. So it takes a lot of, especially adults who have been through that, who have, come out on the other side of that. Maybe look at your inner child relationship, like maybe do some inner parenting and heal a little bit, maybe find some therapy if you can, talk to your friends about their journeys, like get curious about how you understand yourself first because, you know, if we can get curious about ourselves and have self-compassion first, maybe not first, but like absolutely have that a part of our journey of learning to do that for other people, it will inspire. When you can do it for yourself, you can absolutely do it for other people. Again, there's like a learning curve and time, you know, it takes time, but it's only natural as you practice on yourself that it develops greater capacity for other people to offer those things to other people. And I'm not saying that this is a monolithic experience either. Like there's the inverse that can happen where you're very good at being super curious about other people, and when it comes to yourself, you kind of just shut down. That's totally fair. Trauma does a lot of things, but like maybe get curious about why that is, why you are that way. maybe try to find some resources or talk to some friends about that. You know, I think also the way that therapy is labeled still a little bit as like it's changing, and I'm very grateful for this shift, but it's still like, oh, well, I don't need therapy. I'm not broken. Like, y'all, first of all, like, can we stop with the pathology? I am so over it. I'm so over it.
Right? Because we treat all these things as sicknesses. Yes.
And that's why I love that you're doing this podcast specifically, because it is helping people break down and dismantle another product of white supremacy colonialist culture, which is the pathology paradigm. Pathology, when we pathologize and determine human differences, natural variances in human existence as illness, as brokenness, as disease, as what, that's why we have autism moms with hate groups like Autism Speaks who try to find a fucking cure for autism when in fact it is just a different way of existing. We are not fucking broken. We don't need a cure. We need support. And our support looks different from neurotypical individuals. Our support looks different from other autistic individuals. If that like autism is also a fucking spectrum. That's why it's called the spectrum. Like our expressions just mean like I would love to see a world where, because, and I truly think, okay, going back to a question before, I forget how you worded it, but like what would get us there, right? Like what would get us to that future? Adopting the neurodiversity paradigm. Because when you're adopting a neurodiversity paradigm, you're not only seeing someone and their brain as valid, however the fuck they are, like however that's wired and how that's expressed. But if you accept neuro differences that way, you're accepting the whole person. Like all the identities kind of fall in line underneath that. And in that way, you're just seeing a person who has needs, who has desires, and asking, who are you and how can I help you? Not who are you? What diagnosis do you have? Do I have to put you in a special class? Like I, I could go on a rant for days about this. So I'm just going to stop it there. But genuinely, I think one of the bigger steps that we could take is truly embracing neurodiversity as a key component of human existence, because then we have, again, more capacity to accept other identities like gender and sexuality and even race and things like just understanding that people don't choose those identities. We can't choose them. The only thing we can do, if they're not blatantly apparent because like maybe it's our skin color, the only thing we can do is realign, is rediscover who we actually are. Because so frequently, so many of us are just fighting to fucking survive. And a lot of that survival is coming from figuring out who we are outside of the structures that be. So yeah. Oh man. Neurodiversity paradigm. Stop pathologizing shit. Like, stop doing that.
Heck yeah.
Okay.
All right, I'll give you an easy question now because
Sure.
I want to hear more about your business, which I feel like you must talk about all the time. So you've probably got it down. But so yeah, tell us more like, kind of, both from like the lens of like this is just another option that people can take that maybe people don't realize is an option. You don't have to go work for the man. There are other paths and you found one. But also, if someone is looking for like a resource either in our area or their area, what does it kind of look like that, what are you helping people with? What are you guiding people through? What types of people do you work with, etc.?
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing I do want to just outright be very transparent about, I am a very privileged individual to have family that supported me through transition. I was in a severe autistic burnout, started in 2019, and I could not work. I could not for, well, through the pandemic, I started coaching academy in 2021, I think. So at least for 2 years, couldn't do shit. Like I was just out for the count, like could not handle life. And then, as 2021, I went through schooling, which again, more privileged because my mom helped me go to school for it. I then got graduated, started my business. So like this whole process has been possible because I had the resources to begin with. And it is not, I want to fully acknowledge, it is not accessible to everybody to hit the grind and become your own boss, especially if you have to work however many jobs that you might hate just to pay your bills. And then what free time do you have? So I won't say I have all the answers, and I do want to be honest and transparent about how I started, because I was afforded that privilege, and I don't want to give false false advertising in a way, like about origin stories. So that being said, though, I do think the job that I do, so there's two parts, right? I help individuals and I help institutions. On the institutional level, my goal is to work my way from the top down.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of help establishments understand, or institutions understand, how their practices are not inclusive enough, and in fact penalize people for having differences, even if they think they're doing a good job, but their turnover is obviously indicating otherwise, or like they're just having internal conflict that they don't really understand, right? And it often comes down to communication differences, cultural differences, not having a psychologically safe environment because people aren't feeling safe enough to show up authentically as their whole selves at work. And that can affect a lot. And then, all the way down to hiring processes and like how people interview, for instance. Like that alone could be a make or break for certain individuals, specifically a lot of us autists. So just throwing that out there, businesses, if you're listening, talk to a neurodivergent consultant about your hiring practices. And like the internal supports, like, do we really need to have diagnoses to offer accommodations? Like, what is the fucking point? Everyone deserves accommodations, okay? If someone needs to have the lights dimmed a bit and a quiet space, or have their headphones in, if they're getting their work done, what does it matter?
Mm-hmm.
What does it matter? So anyway, all that good stuff, like educating on intercultural responsiveness, microaggressions, just a diverse identity in general. Like how do we be decent humans to each other in the workplace? That's what I talk about a lot. So there's that. And then on the individual level, right? I support people from the bottom up. I love working with fellow queer, neurodivergent, and or disabled individuals who are hitting familiar stopping points again and again and again, and just don't know what to do. They feel stuck. They might feel overwhelmed. Frequently, they are seeing external ramifications of what internally is not aligned. And that's my job to help them see. I provide that container for them to look clearly into their lives. I don't provide any answers. I might provide some guidance. I have tools, exercises, or whatever. And of course, there are times where I'll provide like peer to peer kind of information, like share some insight from my own life if I've lived through something similar. But most of that time is dedicated to allowing space and time for an individual who might not be used to having space and time afforded to them, who might not be used to giving themselves permission to have a moment to take up space, to take up time, and really explore who they want to be, who they already are. We again, looking at the future, there's this exercise that I have people do where we literally do look at our future selves and see how that person is actually who we are right now. Our life circumstances are just trying to lie to us about how we're showing up, or like who we are. So if we can shift our attention to how we want to show up because we know who we are, then we can slowly start to impact our circumstances. So that's the bulk of my work, from bottom up to top down.
Very cool. So this is a big one. How can us neurodivergent folks support our neurodivergent friends who are from these other communities, especially maybe white neurodivergent folks, or neurodivergent folks that just maybe don't have those other identities? Like, how can we support our friends who have maybe a whole lot more going on?
Yeah. Oh gosh. No, that's a great question. I think we underestimate the power of sharing stories and being in relationship. Yes, there is so much need for actual resources to help people with XYZ things like financial security or housing security, food security, anything that might be threatening their literal survival. But also what do we do about thriving? How do we support each other through all that stuff to the point of thriving? And I think part of it needs to be sharing ourselves vulnerably, listening without judgment, radically accepting each other and all our mess, validation, inspiring people and empowering them to validate themselves. And that can come from, like I just said, like just literally listening without judgment, affirming vocally, physically, asking, can I give you a hug? Can I just be with you? Can I be in a space with you? Yeah, like starting small. We don't have to have these grand gestures of, I mean, they're beautiful when they land right, but like we don't need grand gestures of love and support when like that's not always accessible anyway. Like start with what you have. You have love. You have a voice, and however you speak, whether it be, through sign language or body language or speaking, like whatever it may be, ask them if you can help them search for actual resources, like if they need therapy or if they need financial advising or, support groups, like literally that. And I will say, finding joy together. So not just focusing on the needs, but focusing on the whole person, because those needs are only a part, like, yeah, they might be foundational to the whole person, but they're only a part of the person. What else does this person have? Or who are they? What do they contribute to the world? What do they wish they could? What can you do to support them in those ways? Literally just asking how you can show up impactfully for them, and finding joy together, whether it be trans joy or Black joy or, like literally any joy, because that's what sustains us. That's what pulls us through all the crap, like if we can't seek joy, then how are we going to feel motivated to survive another day? So helping your friends, whether it be through distraction or intentional, like, hey, let's go do this thing that you love. Tell me about your favorite thing right now. Like, just thinking like autism, ADHD, like info dumping, like,
Yes.
like,
What's the thing that you're obsessing about right now that you might not be obsessed about in 3 weeks, but tell me about it now. Tell me about it now.
right. Like, tell me about it. Let me do an activity with you in that. Like I have just as an example, I'm so excited. Next Saturday, one of my friends is having a PowerPoint party where people are literally dedicating 10 minutes of their time each to present in whatever fashion they see fit information about something they love or just want to like talk about or share. Like, how fucking cool is that?
That is genius.
Like, build community like that, like, and there are so many resources that, and I do see this being a downside of just grassroots organization in general. Like, we're really good at being the pockets that we need in certain areas, and then when it comes to kind of cross-pollinating and like cross communication, some groups are better at it than others. Like, I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but I am seeing that it could definitely be more. So like, don't give up hope on the search. Also, if you're looking for resources, like there are things out there that by word of mouth, Google searching, showing up in community spaces in general, like a coffee shop or something. Like there are tons of things everywhere that you can literally. One of the people that is like very involved in local community stuff. Like, I met at a coffee shop. I overheard them talking about gender, and I was like, "Oh my god, can I be this weird stranger and just interrupt your conversation?" And we ended up having a great like 2-hour conversation together, just out of the blue, and we stayed in contact, and now we work together sometimes. Like, it's just stuff like that. Don't be afraid. I mean, have your fear, but treat it as a friend, like harness that and turn it and transform it into courage. Like, get curious, get courageous, have compassion for yourself in the process and compassion for other people. The 3 C's right there. Like, that's another tool that you can use to support yourself and support your loved ones who might have marginalized experience that you're not experiencing yourself. Absolutely.
Fantastic. And then, so the kind of the thing that I always close the podcast with is my kind of message to everybody. I just remind everybody, you are not the problem. So if this, what would your final, if you had just one thing, you're like, take this with you into your, what would you give listeners to take with them after this podcast?
Oh gosh. We talked about so much, so it's hard to like condense into one. Oh my god. Okay.
Right?
I mean, I do love your tag of like, you are not the problem, society is. I think that's really, really important. But I guess if I were to add to it, or like, say my own, so maybe just extending on like the last topic, the quick touch on joy, right? As important as it is to have deeper understanding about your neurodivergence, how you show up in the world, what intersectional identities you possess, or that for the same of your fellow loved ones or colleagues or whomever, as important as understanding those things and knowing how it shows up in the world and how people are treated and how we want to make that change for the better, access your whole selves. Like, don't limit yourself by the labels we use to connect with each other. Let them inspire you for connection, and also let them inspire you to get deeper and find joy, like a common thread of joy through it all, because life should be joyful. It doesn't have to be all the time, but what's the point? Like like if you're having a hard day, find a way to laugh about it. If you are feeling completely bogged down by the world and it's shitty behavior because we are not fitting the mold, find people that care about you. And if you are having a hard time doing that, I fully volunteer to be contacted. Email me, like, yeah, like either of us. Like, there is always more love available. That's it. There is always more love available.
I love it. I love it. All right. Is there anything else that you want to talk about that I didn't ask about? And I can always slot stuff in. Is there anything we missed?
I guess just really hitting home also, not only is there more love, there's always more love externally. If you are looking for love inwardly, keep looking. If you're not finding it, you will find it. It might be a painful experience at first, but you deserve your own love. And especially when the world doesn't seem to want to be giving it to you, like, on its own, like, guess what? You get to be your own best keeper. You get to take care of yourself. You get to be your parent. You get to be your inner child. You get to offer yourself love. The world often isn't fair, especially to neurodivergent folk. And we have to be our first line of care and defense, just as other marginalized identities have to do the same. So, if that's your experience, don't give up. Keep choosing love. Keep seeking love and joy, because you deserve it. We all do.
I love it. I love it. All right. Cool. Well, thank you so much. It has been awesome.
Thank you for having me. This is fun.
Holy moly, wild cannoli. That was a doozy of an episode. I don't know about you, but I loved every second of it. I just love talking to Jaesic about pretty much anything because they are just so smart and so well spoken, and they just really care. They care so much. And if you want more of Jaesic, I am going to include all of their info in the show notes in the description, so you can follow up with them if you feel so led. And if you enjoyed this episode of Brainbow Connection, I would just love you to bits if you would give us a follow, give us a subscribe, share the episode on your socials, tag me, follow up with me on Instagram. I would love to talk to you. And of course, if you have a story that you want to share, reach out, because this is not just my podcast, it is our podcast. And I want to share as many stories as possible so that we can really see that being neurodiverse is not a one-size-fits-all label. It is as colorful and diverse as the world itself. So I hope to see you next time. And just remember that you are not the problem. Have a great day. Bye.
3 cheers to neurodivergency. Raise your cup.